Good afternoon. Welcome to the Magic Software webinar, Building an Offline Mobile Strategy. I'm Tom Hutchins and I'm joined today by my colleague Joe Da Silva. Now before we get going, Joe, could you just confirm that you can see my screen? You should be able to, but we have had a couple of issues lately, so I just want to make sure.
I can, yes.
Okay, perfect. So, the purpose of today's presentation is to make sure that, just to introduce the concept of building offline. So I'm going to give a quick introduction to some of the concepts and challenges, and then Joe is going to show you how easy it is to build these into your mobile applications using Magic. So offline, it's not just about not having a data network, it's being able to work in a disconnected mode and managing data transfer between your device and your server. And it's very important these days because whether you're dealing with consumer apps or enterprise apps, users are expecting the same functionality everywhere. But our infrastructure can't really keep up with that, whether that's lack of mobile signal, free Wi-Fi, slow networks. We need to have an answer for what people can do when they don't have connectivity available. And because we're becoming increasingly reliant on mobiles and the internet for our daily lives, and we have data in cloud-based services, we need to be able to have access. And in the past, offline was too difficult, but now, as you'll see, it's quite possible and straightforward. So it's not just a nice to have, as it's now almost a question of ticking a box to make it work offline. There's a bit more to it than that, but it's becoming far more straightforward. So your users really do feel quite justified in demanding that. And whereas cloud could certainly turn devices into thin clients, and we could say that mobile data is everywhere these days, on the other hand, there's still plenty of areas where it's either expensive or unreliable or slow to use networks. And also, we're approaching a point with the rise of the Internet of Things, where even on the new 5G networks that are predicted to be available then, there's going to be a greater increase in traffic volume than the speed at which we'll be able to make the networks faster. So at that point, we're still going to have some kind of answer because there simply won't be enough airspace available. And in fact, almost all users can benefit from offline, whether they are consumers who can rely on web apps for everything. They can't afford to take a risk that simple things won't be available. Whether it's anyone doing m-commerce and maybe wanting to download a catalog so that large amounts of information don't have to be re-downloaded frequently, especially on a slow network. For workflow management, where events must be logged, but they don't have to necessarily be uploaded immediately. Timestamps and geolocation allows you to verify where you are when you've done something without necessarily having a network access. And consultants keeping accurate timesheets, they have to keep the timesheet up to date, but it doesn't have to necessarily be submitted immediately. That might be a weekly task. So there's a huge amount of quite simple tasks that can be greatly improved with offline access. But there are also plenty of challenges. Even though our modern application platforms can build the access in, offline access affects workflow logic and security. So if you're adding in local storage, network servers and application, there's a lot of different areas that you have to consider how offline is going to affect your application. One of the ways that it affects applications is you could have multiple session conflicts, and in a way this is something that is going to happen because you need users to be able to access data and to store it and work on it offline, re-upload it later. But in many cases, particularly with sort of more collaboration apps, it's very likely that other people will also be working on the same thing. So we use offline patterns to manage how mastered copies are handled and to determine what actions to take when there is a conflict. So there are many different patterns you can use. You choose different ones depending on how likely it is you'll have a conflict and how much of a record or subject you want to actually prevent access to. And interestingly, the last one on this list, the implicit lock, is really what we're dealing with in the demonstration, because this is taking the platform and actually using the platform's own internal code to determine how the lock's going to work. So rather than having to necessarily code a lock yourself, you just say, I want to make it do this, and Joe will show you how that works. So building offline apps with an application platform is still challenging, even though you have solved your security requirements, because you need to make sure that your code can be updated. A platform can handle that. Browsers might not provide very much feedback, and cross-platform compatibility can be quite a handful. So mobile application platforms work on metadata across different application platforms. They handle the coding for you and can build in the offline support. So the application platform is the way forward. And now I'm going to hand over to Joe so you can see that for yourselves. And I'll just do this, make it presenter. And Joe, go ahead please.
Thank you, Tom. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you and I can see your screen.
Oh, excellent. Okay, I'm not going to show you a lot of slides. It's mainly a practical demo, but I just want to reiterate a few things that we can implement, and then I'm just going to show you JWAPs that implement those patterns. So the first one is that when the user connects, or the very first time that the device needs the application, it will connect to the server, download any application definition, any application resources like images and other details that are persistent, and any user data that in this case could be a subset. Normally it will be a subset because depending what kind of implementation you've done for the application. Let's say if you're talking about a salesperson that has a catalog, and you might segregate the data based or group the data based on the region, for example. So that's a subset that normally lives on the mobile, and that would work offline as well. In the example I'm going to show you is an application. I'm going to show you two, one on the iPad and one on an Android. But for the iPad, I just have a practical problem that as soon as I disconnect from the network, I won't be able to share it with you. But you can also try on your device. So I'll give you an address if you want to test the same application offline capability from your iPad, for example, or iOS device. So the idea is that when you start the application, it can start either connected or disconnected and do its normal work. But when you also select, for example, any screen, any functionality, that should be working even when you go into airplane mode, and that should carry on doing what it normally do. In another instance, you might want to authenticate the user based on the existing credentials on the device. So the situation here will be that the user comes back. You might decide that they are only required to log in once. When they going back to the same application, they don't need to re-enter the credentials, but they could also do that. And the same idea here, it will go and even require login if you want. And you notice that everything is working as offline, as you can see, based on the icon on the top that this device is currently in airplane mode. The data is still coming, or the data was held on the device, and any data that is designed to work disconnected will be presented, will be available in that device, and navigation will be allowed. The point where you sync back is whenever, it could be, for example, whenever there is connection, or you can sync on specific occasions. Let's say that if you want to upload a lot of data, like catalog data, once a week or whenever they are back in the office, those situations. But in general terms, the options are all yours, and it's up to you to define that. You can start locally when there's a connection, sync. When there's no connection, work with the load that exists there. Before we conclude, let me just share my screen with you, and I'll show you firstly connected on the iPad. If you bear with me for a second, I'm sharing my iPad, which is a real device. As you probably know, I'm on a Windows machine which doesn't have access to an iOS emulator. I use a tool called AirPlay that allows me to share a real iPad on the network. Sorry, Air Server, not AirPlay. And it's just trying to connect to the iPad at the moment. And here it is. So you should be able to see now the same as I see on a real device. So I have here is a demo app that I'll start. As you can see, I'm connected to the network, which is in this case is requirement to share through the Air server. I can go and navigate through the app normally, and I could get the data. So every action here is tripping to the server and caching locally. So all this data works for both connected and disconnected. The moment I disconnect this, I won't be able to share this with you on the screen, but you can test, as I say, from your own device. I'll give you the address that you can test this application. I'll paste at the end, and you can download this app and see for yourself on any iOS device. And you can just go into airplane mode, as you normally would do here, and it still work. The moment I do that, obviously I'll lose connection, as I said. But let me show you the equivalent on an Android device now with a different application, just to show you something different. So here I have a timesheet running on a mobile device that I can select data, and you can see, even though this is an emulator, I can emulate the disconnection of the network, so you still be able to see the data. So I'm doing here just selecting some information that brings data. You can see some timesheet for that customer, etc. What I'm going to do is go to my settings now and disconnect from the network and go back to my app. And I'm going to select another customer. Let's say this one. And that is still bringing the data. Let's pick a month here. And it's still bringing the data and working based on the data that was cached on the device. So what you have is, when you implement this, you have options to implement any type of design or situation that you want, how much that should be cached, etc. on the device. And to make things even easier for you, we also provide you with a list of components that we call the framework that you can use to quick start any application that you need. So you have a series of services or components that you can use to design the UI, to do the login services, do menus or locations or charts. So for example, you can, as the second example I just showed you, you can design applications. These are components and buttons and UI graphs, etc., that comes ready for you to use.
Joe,
So
sorry to interrupt,
of an item and a sub-selection. Sure.
Sorry, Joe, we're not seeing your device here.
You're not seeing my device. You can see my screen because...
we've got your PowerPoint, but not the device.
Not the device. Yeah, I already... Oh, you couldn't see the device when I showed you. Let's see. Screen on the main monitor. Okay, screen monitor 1. Okay. Okay, I'm glad you shouted. So let's just go back from the beginning. I think I have multiple monitors and you were looking to, I was sharing the different one. Sorry about that. Let me just start with the iOS, then repeat the iOS. And I'm going to share that. So just to be sure, you're looking at a screen saying UI, UX standard components, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Yeah, Paul saying that, so okay. So let me just share my iPad again. And I'm going to show you the application. Here it is. So hopefully now you can see the iPad.
Yes, we can see it, thanks. Okay,
so what I was showing you is that I can access this application. This application is connected to the network and I can have access to the data. Now you should be able to see me navigating through the app, correct? And I'm going to show you also an Android app that at the moment is disconnected from the network. So you should be able to see my application still running, and I can select data. And as you can see on this device, I am disconnected from the network. As you can see here, my Wi-Fi is off and I have no network at the moment. Okay. So I was also saying that we provide you with a list of components that you can kickstart to create any application that allows you this selection, type of selection screen. And also, let me just share here. Yeah. And also a login component that provides a series of functionality with the standards and actions and works for both online and offline. And also, actually, all these components work for both online and offline. So once you implement this or reuse this on your application, it's automatically catering for both. Or location services for map, navigation, GPS, and location, or menu component that allows you to quickly add and remove, even at end user level. So you could even allow your end users to reorder, reorganize those menu items. And also a chart component that allows you to create and embed charts. And these again are working or will work offline as well as online. Okay, so Tom, I was still in a very short version of the webinar, right? So that was I stop here and allow you to ask any question that you may have. So you can use the question box or window on GoToMeeting, and we'll respond to your questions. Thank you very much.